Good morning and welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. EU and U.S. lawmakers both move against Iran in the wake of the Islamic Republic's attack against Israel. More on the sanctions.
The Senate has dismissed both articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas. Lawmakers react to that decision.
Boeing is facing scrutiny from lawmakers as whistleblowers criticize the company's safety culture. We have more on the testimony and Boeing's response to the allegations.
Another Ivy League school under pressure for reports of campus anti-Semitism. Lawmakers grill Columbia University officials over what's being done in response. We have takeaways from the hearing.
Big job gains in the U.S., but who's benefiting? The employment report suggests it's not legal American citizens. And economists on how illegal immigration is masking the true picture of the economy.
America's debt problem and high interest rates could wreak havoc on the world's financial stability. Find out more with the host of Business Matters.
5 years ago, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris was ravaged by a massive fire. French officials say work to restore the historic landmark is going well, and it may soon open to the public. See some of the amazing restoration work.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Today is Thursday, April 18th.
We're going to get talking about former President Trump, but the EU and French President Macron, they want to come after Iranian missiles and drones, and they want to hit them with sanctions.
Right, and it sounds like the EU is pretty unified around this, that Italy's foreign minister says that he wants to do just that, and also sanctions those disrupting the Red Sea as well.
Yeah.
So this is, of course, topping the news this morning after we speak about former President Trump, who met yesterday with Polish President Andrzej Duda at Trump Tower in New York City.
This is the latest meeting of the former president with foreign leaders.
The Trump campaign described the two men as great friends.
The pair discussed a proposal by Duda that NATO countries spend a minimum of 3% of their GDP on defense.
Duda, whose term in office expires in 2025, was one of Trump's preferred international partners during his presidency.
Some European leaders say they're nervous that another Trump presidency would mean waning U.S. support for Poland's neighbor Ukraine, and the NATO military alliance.
Now, for more on this meeting and some analysis, we bring in Mary Beth Long. She's a foreign policy expert and former U.S. government official. Good morning. It's good to see you. So what do you think? Is this a meeting between friends, or was there a political and strategical reason for Trump to invite the Polish president?
I think there's both. These gentlemen were very close during the presidency. And as you know, there's some critical decisions being made this weekend, most likely, in the United States over Ukraine funding. So I think the friend, President Duda with President Trump, sat together and hopefully spoke about NATO support and U.S. support to Ukraine, which is so critical to Poland's security.
Right. So Trump has been pretty critical of Ukraine aid, though, and he's now proposing aid in form of a loan. What do you think President Duda wants to see from the U.S.?
Well, I think he wants to see unequivocal support to Ukraine, and I think that's what the president was offering. You know, President Trump has always taken the position that countries should do more, the U.S. should be relied on less, and that in one form or another, countries should step up, including NATO, in doing more for European regional security. Poland has been and will remain a strategic partner, and in fact, Poland's role in European security is even greater today than it was during Trump's presidency. So I'm sure that they discussed ways that President Trump could approach strengthening U.S. support to Ukraine while still holding Europe and even Ukraine accountable for stepping up to do more.
So some actually worry there will be waning Ukraine support if there should be another Trump presidency. Could this also be a motivator for Andrzej Duda as well? So what do you think was his message on that end to Trump?
I think that President Duda, who has been a strong partner and a good personal friend, persuaded Trump, tried to talk to him more about what was going on the ground. It's very difficult here in the U.S. to appreciate what the people in Ukraine and the people in Poland are going through. I think Poland feels correctly so that if Ukraine were to fall to President Putin, Poland would be next. No one has done more to stop and to prevent Russian troops from doing what they would like to do in Ukraine than Poland has. They have a very strong defense minister, Minister Sikorsky, well known to the United States. And I think that the President Duda probably gave a little bit more ground reality, a feel for what's happening that President Trump, unfortunately, given all his other commitments, probably lacks at this point.
And what's interesting is that Trump has actually met and spoke with multiple foreign leaders before. So that includes the Hungarian president, the British foreign secretary, and a call with the Saudi Arabian crown prince. I'm wondering, is that common, especially for those leaders to reach out to the opponent of the sitting president?
Absolutely. We in the United States do it. We always sit with opposition. We know the opposition in the countries where we have a presence. And because the United States is such a large international player, usually at this time and even before, countries reach out to make sure that they understand the position of a possible incoming president, a candidate. And they also take the opportunity, as I'm sure President Duda did, to shape and inform a candidate so that to the extent possible, they can be considered a reliable ally or source of information as a new candidate or candidate Trump begins to formulate his policy and update his positions on key issues like Ukraine.
All right, got it. Thank you so much, Mary Beth Long. I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
And European Union leaders decided yesterday to step up sanctions against Iran. This after Tehran's missile and drone attack on Israel left world powers scrambling to prevent a wider conflict in the Middle East. EU Council President Charles Michel reacts.
We feel it's very important to do everything to isolate Iran, to engage with the countries in the region so that we can try to support a peace process, to support peace talks.
The summit in Brussels is the first meeting of the EU's 27 national leaders since the attack on Saturday. Israel has signaled it will retaliate, but has not said how. In the U.S., House lawmakers also recently passed several bills aimed at countering Iran. One measure is the Standing Against Houthi Aggression Act, which labels Houthis as terrorists. Another is the Iran Sanctions Relief Review Act, which requires congressional review of Iran sanction waivers. And the Senate voted yesterday to dismiss articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
The Democrat-controlled chamber dismissed the two charges against Mayorkas, voting quickly and along party lines. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the details.
As suspected,
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer Wednesday called the attempt to oust Mayorkas a dangerous precedent, accusing Republicans of orchestrating a political show.
we're supposed to have debates on the issues, not impeachments on the issues. We are not supposed to say that when you disagree with someone on policy, then that's suddenly a high crime and misdemeanor.
House Republicans introduced two articles of impeachment against Mayorkas last month, one for willful and systematic refusal to comply with the law, and the other for breach of public trust, both stemming from his alleged mismanagement of the southern border. It took 2 rounds of voting for the motion to clear in the House, making Mayorkas the first cabinet secretary to be impeached in nearly 150 years. Its journey in the Senate was far shorter. Both articles were declared unconstitutional by a 51-48 and a 51-49 majority. House Speaker Mike Johnson condemned the Senate vote.
The idea that the Senate, and under Chuck Schumer's leadership, voted on party lines to not even allow the American people to evaluate the evidence is shameful. I think it's a violation of their constitutional responsibility, and I think there'll be a reckoning for all this in the election cycle in the fall.
Senate Republican Committee Communications Director Mike Berg echoed this, saying, quote, vulnerable Democrats are going to be haunted by it, referring to those seeking re-election in swing states. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said the Senate effectively ignored the direction of the House, setting an unfortunate precedent. The White House applauded the Senate's decision. A spokesperson said the chamber rightly voted down a, quote, baseless impeachment. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Despite pressure from conservatives, Speaker Mike Johnson announced yesterday he's sticking to his guns and plans to put a series of foreign aid bills on the floor. We have more on the aid package and an attempt to oust Johnson from his speaker post.
I am not resigning.
The three-part supplemental package looks strikingly similar to the Senate's bill in several key ways. It includes a little over $9 billion in humanitarian aid for Gaza and other conflict zones around the world, a red line for Democrats. It adds up to about $95 billion in aid, the same amount the Senate bill included, with a change that $10 billion in Ukraine economic assistance is in the form of a repayable loan. Overall, the bill will send around $60 billion to Ukraine, $26 billion to Israel, and $8 billion to the Indo-Pacific. Speaker Johnson says there's no way to move forward without the help of Democrats.
This is very simple. I'm operating with the smallest margin in U.S. history. I have a one-vote margin.
Conservative GOP members are attempting to oust Johnson over the aid package. They're angered by Ukraine aid and the lack of action on southern border security. Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky said he would co-sponsor Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's motion to vacate, but the speaker appears unfazed by threats to oust him.
I don't walk around thinking about the motion to vacate. It's a procedural matter here that I think has been abused in recent times. Maybe at some point we change that.
Johnson says it's time for lawmakers to roll up their sleeves.
But right now I got to do my job, and so do all my colleagues, and I'm confident at the end of the day, in spite of all the drama and all the palace intrigue, I think we're going to get that done.
Representative Mark Molinaro says Americans are tired of the theater. The congressman says those who want to move forward with the motion to vacate ought to put it to rest.
For too many of my colleagues, they feel as if democracy is too much work. If it is, they should find a different job.
Molinaro says supporting Ukraine and Israel and others is the right move.
What the Speaker has done is allowing us in this critical moment to take a vote on whether or not America is going to make clear to our enemies that we mean business and to our allies that we can be trusted.
Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi said he would not support ousting Johnson.
I think he's a good person, and he wants to do the right thing. Now he's got to stand up and show us that that's the case.
President Biden on Wednesday endorsed the plan offered up by Speaker Johnson. The president called the support to Israel and Ukraine critical and praised the humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Prosecutors in former President Trump's so-called hush money trial want to ask him about civil cases in which he was found liable for sexual abuse and fraud. That's according to a document made public yesterday. Prosecutors say these would include the recent verdict in Trump's New York civil fraud trial and the defamation case brought against him by E. Jean Carroll. Other topics will be the Trump Organization's 2022 tax fraud conviction, as well as Trump's lawsuit against Hillary Clinton that was dismissed last year. The judge will have the final say in allowing the Manhattan DA's office to bring these cases up during Trump's possible cross-examination. Judge Merchant said Tuesday he may hold a hearing over their request tomorrow if jury selection ends early.
Trump is complaining about the number of jurors his team gets to veto, just 10, and they've already used up 6.
But so is the prosecution. Jury selection continues today. For now, 7 jurors total are seated. NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards reports on what we know so far about the selected jurors.
7 jurors were seated on the second day of the so-called hush money trial in Manhattan. In the coming days, these 4 men and 3 women will be joined by 5 more New Yorkers to decide the fate of former President Trump. Prosecutors accused Trump of falsifying business records to cover up a payment made to a former adult film actress who he allegedly had an affair with, to buy her silence during his 2016 run for president. In the week before the trial, Trump's attorneys made several attempts to delay it. They argued that the majority of New Yorkers already think the former president is guilty. Because of that concern, jury selection was expected to take at least 2 weeks. But now, with more than half the jury selected, Judge Juan Merchan is hoping to finish by the end of this week. So who are the jurors? Juror number 1 is a middle-aged salesman from Ireland. He will serve as the case's foreman. He works in sales and has some college education. He gets his news from the New York Times, Daily Mail, Fox News, and MSNBC. He said he heard about some of Trump's other cases. Juror number 2 is an oncology nurse and a native New Yorker. She gets her news from the New York Times, CNN, Google, and Facebook. She said she didn't have an opinion about Trump. Juror number 3 is a corporate attorney originally from Oregon. He gets his news from the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Google. He said he wasn't very familiar with all of the charges against Trump in this case. Juror number 4 is a self-employed IT consultant originally from Puerto Rico. He's lived in the Lower East Side for 40 years. He gets his news from the Daily News, the New York Times, and Google. He said he finds Trump fascinating and mysterious. Juror number 5 is a young English teacher with a master's degree in education. She gets her news from Google and TikTok, but said she doesn't really care for the news. She is the only juror who wasn't aware of Trump's other criminal cases. Juror number 6 is a recent college graduate working as a software engineer for the Walt Disney Company. She gets her news from the New York Times, Google, Facebook, and TikTok. She said she will be fair and impartial. Finally, juror number 7 is an attorney living in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. He gets his news from the New York Times, the New York Post, Wall Street Journal, and Washington Post. He said he had no personal opinions about Trump. With over half of the jurors picked by the second day of trial, Trump complained Wednesday about not getting unlimited chances to reject prospective jurors. New York state law only permits 10 strikes in lower-class felony cases. Trump said on Truth Social that the 10 was not nearly enough when we were purposely given the second-worst venue in the country. Both the prosecution and the defense have used 6 of their 10 strikes. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Coming up, another Ivy League school in the hot seat for reported campus anti-Semitism. Lawmakers grill Columbia University officials over what's being done to combat the issue. We have takeaways from yesterday's hearing.
Dual congressional hearings revealing shocking allegations of lapses of safety controls at Boeing. A whistleblower makes his testimony.
The Arizona State House rejected an attempt to repeal a near-total abortion ban set to go into force. What this means for the future of abortion access in the state in just a moment.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
I love you! These are all farmers. Maybe
no,
not
there's
this
not a
one.
farm anymore.
But here's a farm, right?
No, there's also not a farm anymore.
All these people shut down because of the government policies?
Yeah.
The government wants to control the food. So we don't eat meat, but we eat insects.
As the price of staples goes through the roof, people will say, I can't afford a steak anymore. So, all right, I'll eat your stupid crickets.
Good to have you back. Another Ivy League school faced scrutiny from lawmakers yesterday over a rise in campus anti-Semitism.
Columbia University President Manu Shafiq was absent from last year's grilling, which led to presidents of both UPenn and Harvard resigning.
School officials came prepared for yesterday's 4-hour hearing, but still had a hard time giving clear answers around hiring consequences and disciplinary action. NTD Jeremy Sandberg has takeaways from the grilling.
Another Ivy League school president met lawmakers Wednesday over a surge in campus anti-Semitism since Hamas's terrorist attack on Israel last year. Lawmakers asked if calling for genocide against Jews violated Columbia University's code of conduct. All 4 officials answered yes, it does. Columbia University President Manu Shafiq says the central challenge on campus is trying to reconcile free speech, including the right to protest, with the students' right to be in an environment free of harassment or discrimination.
Regrettably, the events of October 7th brought to the fore an undercurrent of anti-Semitism that is a major challenge, and like many other universities, Columbia has seen a rise in anti-Semitic incidents.
Shafiq had the benefit of hindsight and months of preparation after December's disastrous hearing for presidents of Harvard and UPenn. She still had trouble giving definitive answers to some questions on school policy. Congresswoman Lisa McClain asked if groups shouting from the river to the sea, or long live the Intifada, are anti-Semitic comments.
I hear them as such. Some people don't. We have sent a clear message.
So is that yes?
We have sent a clear message to our community.
I'm not asking about the message.
McClain turned to the co-chair of Columbia's task force on anti-Semitism, who said yes. Then Shafiq agreed.
And there should be some consequences to that anti-Semitic behavior.
A big focus of Wednesday's hearing was disciplinary action. Shafiq said tenured professor Joseph Massad, who called the October 7th attacks awesome in an online article the next day, had been spoken to by his department. Massad told CNN no one said anything to him along those lines and had not been reprimanded in any way. He says he was shown solidarity by his chair and deans over death threats he says he received. Massad says his chairmanship was simply coming to the end of a 1-year appointment and was unaware of any probe.
And it's not just that case. Let me bring your attention to Mohammed Abdu, who was hired after the October 7th terrorist attack.
Abdu on social media said he was with Hamas, Hezbollah, and Islamic Jihad. Shafiq said Abdu is grading his students' papers, but will never teach at Columbia again, and that it will be on his permanent record. She stated Columbia officials will not tolerate anti-Semitic threats, images, and other violations, and that much more work is needed, including an improved vetting process for hiring. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Dual congressional hearings Wednesday revealed shocking allegations of lapses of safety controls at Boeing.
We break down the testimony where a whistleblower made some shocking allegations on the safety culture at the company. Take a look.
Boeing feeling the pressure as current and former employees join a panel of witnesses testifying before a Senate subcommittee about what the hearing title called a broken safety culture at the company.
I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is a criminal cover-up.
Sam Salahpour, a quality engineer for Boeing, says when assembling the fuselage on 787 aircrafts, gaps between pieces were left too wide, creating stress which could lead to fatigue and failure over time.
I want to make clear that I have raised these issues over 3 years. I was ignored. I was told not to create delays. I was told, frankly, to shut up.
Ahead of Wednesday's testimony, Boeing said inspections found no evidence of fatigue in parts of the plane now facing questions. The company released a statement reading in part, "We are fully confident in the 787 Dreamliner. These claims about structural integrity of the 787 are inaccurate and do not represent the comprehensive work Boeing has done to ensure the quality and long-term safety of the aircraft." Boeing has faced more than 5 years of questions over its commercial jets following 2 deadly crashes of a different model, the 737 MAX. January's door plug blowout aboard an Alaska Airlines flight added to the pressure. In an earlier hearing Wednesday, a panel of experts informed Congress of a series of recommendations they have made to the FAA for how to fix the issues at Boeing.
There needs to be an environment of psychological safety. They need to learn from that and communicate it and pass it on.
For more on the challenges Boeing is facing, we hear from Mike Leon. He's our contributor and the Director of Policy and Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation, as well as the host of the Can We Please Talk News Commentary podcast. Mike, glad you're here. What is going on right now? Multiple investigations have already been launched into Boeing, and it's desperately trying to get its act together following that door plug blowout. And now this engineer working there is testifying, saying they're putting out defective airplanes. What does Boeing have to do to navigate this crisis?
Well, Kev, first off, good to see you first and foremost, as always, man. Look, as one of my friends told me who flies regularly, if it's a Boeing, I'm not going. And that's kind of the refrain that I heard from a lot of people that fly on this airline. Let's get to what happened on Capitol Hill. And for people that don't understand what's going on with Boeing, remember that in January there was Alaska Airlines that you saw there in the package that on the left side of the wing, a door blew out where nobody happened to be sitting. This is what led to all of this. John Bennett used to work for Boeing, who was, an engineer as well, like the Capitol Hill folks that were testifying. And he recently died on March 11th, weirdly, when he was testifying against Boeing to a law firm. So a lot of questions have started to come up about Boeing safety, specifically around the 777 line, like you mentioned, 787 line, and the 737 line. And there's been so many different reports about different flights from United Airlines across all of these commercial airlines recently, Southwest, that have had recent issues, and they all happen to be Boeing planes. There's 10,000 commercial Boeing airlines that are out there across different airline industries, and there was 2 plane crashes back in 2018 and 2019. Some of the families of those victims were at the hearings yesterday. This has been a huge mess for Boeing, but at the center of it, like you heard in the package there, safety concerns, and they're not addressing the safety concerns. And it looks like, and my biggest takeaway from the hearing yesterday was that they're telling the NTSB, the FAA, the DOT, what it should be doing, when it should be the reverse. The regulatory agencies that govern these airline companies should be telling them what they should be doing in terms of safety and manufacturing.
That's exactly right, Mike. And Salapur was referring to the 787 Dreamliners, and there are hundreds of those in use across multiple airlines here. The whistleblower is not only saying the airplane maker had workers use excessive force to jam these parts of the Dreamliner together, jeopardizing that composite material, but he was reprimanded when he brought this up about the safety concerns. What can Congress do? I mean, you can impose standards on specs for materials, but can you change company culture?
Well, that's going to be the $10,000 question, Kevin, because changing company culture was alluded to by Ed Pearson in the hearing. You heard it from the NASA space engineering as well in the package. And that was at the core tenet of this. And the committee, this is the subcommittee for investigations from the Senate. So Richard Blumenthal and Ron Johnson are co-chairing this. So what they come from this with their findings, what can Congress actually do from an action standpoint, from a legislative standpoint? They're going to make a recommendation. I know Pete Buttigieg has been very vocal about this as he leads a department there on transportation. So I'm going to be interested to see how this all plays out. But again, at the top, we've already had one Boeing CEO resign from all this due to some of the pressure that he was facing externally. We'll see if they start to make some more cultural shifts. Boeing is responsible for 39% of, 39% of their income, comes from government contracts. 60% comes from commercial airlines. So the government uses Boeing for some of their military usage here. So there's a way to exert pressure, contracts not being renewed from that standpoint that will cause financial harm to Boeing. So we'll see if that will get impacted as well.
Yeah, and some of those contracts that you're alluding to there is $20 billion for those C-17 transporters, and this is all within that defense budget, and then $14 billion for B-1 and B-52 weapon support. So this is extremely serious here. Our contributor, Mike Leon, Director of Policy and Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation, and the host of the Can We Please Talk News Commentary podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
The Arizona State House upheld a near-total abortion ban after a second attempt to repeal it.
If the law goes into effect, Arizona will join 14 other states that have almost completely banned abortion.
Democrats in the Arizona House tried repeatedly Wednesday to repeal an 1864 abortion ban set to become law once again, but failed to get the Republican support needed. Several rounds of voting were held on a motion to bring a repeal bill to the floor. In all votes, the chamber deadlocked 30-30, with one Republican joining 29 Democrats. One more Republican vote was needed to allow another vote that would have repealed the law. Democratic leaders told reporters they would try again in future sessions. They are also attempting to place a ballot measure before voters in November that would restore abortion access. Arizona's Democratic governor condemned the vote, saying there was no excuse for not repealing the ban.
This law is so terrible for women in our state. It will have devastating consequences, which is why I called for them immediately to repeal this. They went to the floor last week. The Democrats were ready to do it. The Republicans blocked it last week, and they blocked it again today.
The Republican-controlled House stood firm on its decision not to allow the law to be put up for repeal.
I understand that we have deeply held beliefs, and I would ask everyone in this chamber to respect the fact that some of us believe that abortion is in fact the murder of children.
The old law was revived by a state Supreme Court ruling on April 9th, and unless the legislature intervenes, it could take effect within 60 days. It imposes a prison sentence of 2 to 5 years for anyone found guilty of inducing an abortion, except for a doctor who deems it necessary to save the life of the mother. Arizona currently allows abortion under 15 weeks.
Coming up, the House Oversight Committee is investigating the Chinese regime's infiltration of the United States. We have the latest on the probe.
And 2 Colorado counties are suing the state over immigration-related laws. Find out more about the dispute as the battle against illegal immigration continues.
Big job gains in the U.S., but who's benefiting? The employment report suggests it's not legal American citizens. An economist on how illegal immigration is masking the true picture of the economy.
بیست و سه سال 16 سال عمري ما هفت
اما داعش کردی ام برانبر خشک و دایکانی ازدی اما کاری که دور لهمو چمک دموکراسی و موافقانی مرو و انسانیت او بارو خی که است های به تایبت لایران خوشبوریا بشه که دگرت و با حالانه که اداره اوباما کرد
ریم بو او هفت روز بو و داعش ذکر
تامبوم كرا قوتينيز قريا بما متشكر بهار فيدان نبو باوان رحم نبو
قدامنا سؤالان من خادران نزل باوان ورستم بس ما go بس ناش بيجوش باش.
They would literally be auctioned in front of soldiers, and then the soldiers begin to bid.
زارود وان همو جيبر تي حملي زارود الدم واسسي وان همو جيبر
وحشیگریه که توا عیاره ظلمی که یک جار گرگاوره لما افرطانه کرا و تعدایی که زور زوریان میده که همانه روزانه دست فروشی ده. Imagine being a child, having a child mentality, and these evil people come and wheel you away from the only safety you've ever known.
The tempting online world is encroaching on our campus. Is unplugging cables and confiscating phones the solution to protect our children? No, we just need a clean multimedia platform. Join Ganjing Campus to leverage premium channel features, professional development courses, and kindness event toolkits tailored for teachers. Build a truly positive and interactive classroom community. Foster a pure and delightful learning environment for children.
Thanks for staying with us. Lawmakers are probing the Chinese Communist Party's harmful influence on America.
NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley brings us more from the first of several hearings by the House Oversight Committee.
The House Oversight Committee has launched an investigation into the Chinese regime's harmful influence here in the U.S. The goal is to expose and stop what they call the Chinese regime's political warfare campaign. Members of Congress and a panel of experts dove into areas like education, where the Chinese Communist Party has set up so-called Confucius schools and institutes, from preschool to college, to spread the party's propaganda and praise communism. Other topics included the Chinese regime's attempts to sabotage American agriculture, technology, and business, even going so far as to threaten the Chinese diaspora.
There's transnational repression occurring. We had a hearing with regard to that issue where they're going after dissidents, they're going after critics of the regime, they're going after Tibetans and Uyghurs and other minorities, Hong Kongers who live in the U.S.
For years, China, or CCP, China, has pretended to be our friend, all the while undermining every institution we have.
Shen Yun Performing Arts has long been the target of the Chinese regime because it displays what China was like before communism. And many of the performers practice Falun Gong, a spiritual discipline based on truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, which is persecuted by the Chinese regime.
Theaters received emails threatening mass shootings and bombings if they refused to cancel Shen Yun performances. Shen Yun has reported multiple instances where the tires of their tour buses have been slashed.
They are frankly criminal acts by a foreign government against our people on our soil. This is something that has to be prioritized with a response in the bilateral relationship with the PRC, rather than a shoulder shrug or something that we kind of quietly say that we talked about later.
Uses our own media. One good example is its attack on the Falun Gong. It's basically convinced the entire academic university system in the United States that they are a brainwashed cult. They've done the same thing to our media institutions. And so, that is the way they do it, is by controlling our own narratives within the
You're saying that they're not a brainwashed cult?
I think they're just a group of people that are dissidents of the Chinese communist regime.
Yeah, I agree with you too. They put on a pretty cool dance routine. It's pretty cool.
The committee says it will continue to expose and combat the threats that the Chinese regime poses to U.S. national security. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
2 Colorado counties are suing the state over immigration-related laws. The suit targets 2 state laws that prevent communication between local and federal governments on immigration matters. NTD's Jason Blair reports.
Colorado House Bill 19-1124 and House Bill 23-1100 are the 2 bills named in the suit that limit local and federal law enforcement communication.
It is the position of the Board of County Commissioners in this lawsuit that is a violation of several tenets of the Colorado State Constitution.
The laws also ban police from arresting illegal immigrants in the state. The suit was formally filed by the Douglas County Board, the Douglas County Sheriff, the El Paso County Board, and the El Paso County Sheriff.
We cooperate with our federal partners, and things like this tell us we can't even cooperate with ICE, who is a federal law enforcement agency. That is absolutely ridiculous.
We must allow our law enforcement officers to keep our community safe, to have the tools in their toolbox.
Some of the commissioners expressed uncertainty about how many illegal immigrants have been transferred to Douglas or El Paso counties. They did cite at least 40,000 bused from Texas to the Denver area over 16 months. Last week, the city of Denver announced it will spend $89.9 million on services for illegal immigrants. Numerous budget cuts were mentioned to help pay for the program, including an $8.4 million, or about 2%, cut to the Denver police. Jason Blair, NTD News.
The U.S. is gaining jobs, almost 1 million thus far this year. But who are those jobs going to? Established Americans or immigrants, be they legal or illegal? I asked this to Peter Earle, a senior economist at the American Institute for Economic Research, whether this unprecedented mass illegal immigration is distorting the true picture of the economy. Here's what he told me.
In a sense, it does. One of the things that economists like myself have been dealing with over the last few years have been really unusual economic data, and in particular, unusual job data. Even with the economy weakening lately, with periods of lower industrial production and increasingly stubborn inflation, rising interest rates as well, the job numbers have been pretty robust, at least on the surface. So there's been a few hypotheses as to why, with an economy that's slowing, we have this really sort of hot job market, and there's a few conclusions. The top level conclusions are that either the data is capturing something we're not seeing otherwise, or the data is wrong, and the other is that it could be the influx of a lot of the undocumented people to the United States over the last 2 or 3 years.
There are some job gains here in this current economy. The employment report, though, kind of reveals something a little bit challenging here. It's that native-born Americans are actually not the ones that are gaining jobs. They're losing jobs over the last 4 decades. So who are those jobs going to?
Well, a lot of the jobs that are being taken by people who are, illegal immigrants, undocumented people, are jobs that are either off the books. They are jobs that are sort of a temp nature and that sort of thing. But with the economy in the state it's in right now, those are a lot of the jobs that are being created right now. And, usually we talk about what's called the steady state economy, which is basically growth that you get that fosters continued growth but doesn't create inflation or anything like that. And that's usually the neutral rate. The steady state rate is about 100,000 jobs per month. But now that we see it up to 200 and 300,000 per month, basically we are left with the conclusion that those are mostly jobs that are being taken by undocumented peoples, and they are much harder to track in the data other than that. When they get unemployed, they typically don't or can't file for unemployment. So there's a lot of weird data out there, but it certainly looks as if many of the jobs being created are sort of off the books and simple, low-skill jobs.
So let's zoom out a little bit here, Peter. How is this mass influx of illegal immigrants creating an economy for Americans? What's it doing to it?
Well, it does a few different things. I mean, the first thing is that to some extent, it allows employers to undertake labor-intensive work without raising wages. They can certainly avoid the 20 or 25 states, avoid the consequences of the 20 or 25 states that are raising minimum wages these days. The other thing, though, is that there's an argument made that a lot of those people are doing work that Americans wouldn't do. I don't know that that's necessarily true. It is in some cases. But the other thing is that, again, these numbers are not very precise. I mean, one of the things we see is that when you look at the Labor Department data, many of the jobs which have been created over the last few years are created in healthcare, they're created in construction, that sort of thing. Those are not jobs that are typically taken by undocumented people. So again, there's a lot of uncertainty, and I mean, I think it all goes back to the fact that we had these really unconventional, historically unprecedented challenges and policies undertaken during COVID.
Well, thank you for the close look at this. Peter Earle, senior economist at the American Institute for Economic Research.
Thanks for having me.
Stay with us. America's debt problem and high interest rates could wreak havoc on the world's financial stability. Find out more with Don Ma, the host of Business Matters, coming up.
My dad's name was David. He always talked about getting life insurance, and now it's too late.
No one was expecting my husband Dave to suffer from a heart attack. We didn't have life insurance. We thought we had more time.
Don't be Dave, and don't wait until it's too late to get the life insurance coverage you need. And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Call now to get affordable life insurance.
Just call 800-494-1562.
If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam, no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Remember, don't be Dave. Call now.
Call now. 800-494-1562.
As we naturally age, many people are getting zero amount of this incredible and unique substance. That's when we start seeing an impact in our joints, skin, nails, and even our digestion.
People ask me, Dr. X, what is the #1 supplement I should be taking? My answer is multi-collagen protein.
People's reactions to me, people were like, what are you doing? What is going on? You look amazing. You have a glow about you.
What makes Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen stand out from other brands? 10 types of collagen. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised with vitamin C and probiotics. It's proven to reduce joint discomfort rapidly, continuously, and persistently. It improves the appearance of crow's feet after 4 weeks and improves skin tone after 8 weeks. And it promotes hair thickness, growth, and a reduction in hair breakage.
It has transformed everything from my hair. Like, my hair was starting to kind of just, come out, and I don't have that anymore. My skin feels amazing.
Call the number on your screen and find out how to get a free bottle when you order, plus free shipping and our 30-day money-back guarantee. And as a bonus, we will include Dr. Josh Axe and Jordan Rubin's revolutionary book, Multi-Collagen Makeover, free with your order, plus free shipping and free returns.
I have implicit trust in Dr. Axe because the plan worked. I'm living proof of it.
This is the collagen protein that is backed by clinical studies. It's what my family uses, it's what I use, and I know you're gonna benefit in a big way as well.
Love the results or get your money back. This special TV offer is not available in stores. Call the number on your screen or go online now.
Thanks for staying with us. We have NTD's Business Matters host Don Ma with us now to give us the latest updates from the financial world.
Don, let's start with the buzzword, Boeing.
Right. I mean, like I said before, it seems like Boeing just can't shake the spotlight here. And yesterday, United Airlines announced that it seems like it's going to receive a monetary compensation from Boeing for the financial damages. Now, these damages were incurred during the first quarter due to the grounding of the 737 MAX 9 aircraft. If you remember, United temporarily suspended service on all 79 of its 737 MAX 9 aircraft, which resulted in a $200 million hit for the airline in the first quarter. And United said that in a filing yesterday that a confidential agreement with Boeing is going to provide it with credit memos for future purchases to make up for the grounding damages and the rescheduling of deliveries. So basically what a credit memo is here is an official written acknowledgement that money is owed back to a customer. So if we look at other airlines that have also been impacted, Alaska Airlines said earlier as well in April that Boeing is going to pay, Boeing paid rather, about $160 million to the airline in the first quarter as initial compensation to address the hit from the grounding here.
Yeah, quite a bit coming Boeing's way, but it looks like, United had to also adjust their fleet plan and everything, but it looks like it didn't really make that big of a dent because their earnings were pretty good, right? So let's switch to geoeconomics though, because US officials spoke again recently about China's unfair trade practices. So are they going to take action against this?
Yeah, so, well, what happened was that U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai, she says that the U.S. must take decisive action to protect electric vehicles from subsidized Chinese competition. She singled out this sector. Tai told a U.S. Senate Finance Committee hearing that the U.S. needs to create a level playing field here for U.S. workers. She said that China's anti-competitive practices include things like enormous amount of state support, fostered overproduction as well of solar panels a decade ago that devastated U.S. producers. Tai said that the U.S. Now facing a similar situation with EVs and the automotive sector, and leaving Chinese competition unchecked would cause the U.S. to lose the ability to produce those products, which is very serious here, what she's saying. And the Office of the United States Trade Representative announced that it's opening a new unfair trade practices investigation into China's tactics, policies, and practices, which attempt to dominate the maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding sector. So very important.
Yeah, and Don, senators are urging Tai to use that Section 301 to put tougher tariffs on Chinese EVs. Okay, next. The U.S. is in debt, a lot of it. How is that affecting the world?
Yeah, to say the U.S. is in debt is an understatement, I would say. But America's debt problem is not just affecting the U.S., but apparently it's also affecting the world. So what we're finding out is, according to some sources, that it could wreak havoc on the world's financial stability. And this is according to the International Monetary Fund, or IMF for short. So the U.S. government's rising debt and high interest rates could cause borrowing costs around the world, in fact, to spike, and a spike in treasury yields on U.S. government bonds are associated with surges in government bonds elsewhere around the world as well. This is according to the IMF. And the agency says that's putting pressure on global interest rates and pushing up the cost of borrowing all around the world here. And it doesn't look like U.S. interest rates are coming down anytime soon. So on Tuesday, Federal Reserve officials signaled that rates could, in fact, stay higher for a while due to persistent inflation. And the IMF warns that could also cause investors around the world to start selling off financial assets, including stocks and government bonds. The IMF's warning only adds to concerns about the broader consequences of ballooning U.S. government debt, and which the Treasury Department puts at nearly $35 trillion now.
Right. And what's also interesting is that they were saying that China also has a big deficit of almost 7.6%, right? But the difference here is, I guess, Chinese government debt is held mostly domestically, so that's unlike U.S. treasuries, but it could still affect its trade partners, of course. So something definitely to keep an eye on. Thank you so much, NTD's Business Matters host, Don Ma.
Thanks,
Sure.
Don.
Yep.
And stay with us. 5 years ago, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris was decimated by a massive fire. French officials say work to restore the historic landmark is going well, and it may soon open to the public. See some of the amazing restoration work when we come back.
Do you ever wake up and realize your life has no purpose?
Do I have a death wish? Morgan asked. Maybe I did. I thought this would be our final run ever. We had made millions and millions of dollars, but God had other plans.
Peter Lowe, the one-time drug dealer turned pastor, along with 2 others, will be executed at 12 midnight local time.
The next day, something strange happened. Someone came up to me and gave me this flyer about Jesus.
You can be in heaven, or you can be in hell. The choice is yours.
I've achieved more than you ever will in this stinking prison.
This pathetic maggot got caught, tried to escape my prison. Nobody escapes my prison.
He's a changed person. He's a new man.
I found Christ in here, and he forgave me.
My name is Peter Lone, and I will be executed in 2 hours. Why am I being executed, you ask?
Jesus is for free, and salvation is a gift. Do you believe in Jesus?
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes. Days Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Days Enzyme Fermented Coffee.
I'm in the bedroom.
Okay.
Oh, shit. It's not here.
What?
The gun's not here.
What do you mean? Where is it?
Cameron, are you in there? Open the door. Cam! Come on, Cam.
Welcome back. We're going over to Dubai. The United Arab Emirates is struggling to recover from the heaviest recorded rainfall ever to hit the desert nation.
Its main airport is working to restore normal operations after floodwater covered portions of major highways and roads.
Dubai International Airport allowed global carriers to once again use Terminal 1 this morning. The carrier Emirates stopped travelers flying out of the UAE from checking into their flights.
Pilots and flight crews were struggling to reach the airport because of water on roadways. But today the order was lifted and customers were allowed back into the airport.
By the end of Tuesday, more than 5.5 inches of rain swamped Dubai in around 24 hours. The deluge overwhelmed drainage systems and flooded neighborhoods, including businesses, and even portions of the 12-lane highway running through the city.
The state-run news agency said the rain surpassed anything documented since the start of data collection in 1949. The average yearly rainfall in Dubai is under 4 inches.
And in France, 5 years ago, much of the world-famous Notre Dame Cathedral was destroyed by a devastating fire.
Now, French officials say reconstruction is going fast enough to allow the cathedral's reopening by the end of the year. Here's more.
5 years ago this month, Paris lost much of its most iconic landmark to a massive fire. The 12th century church is home to relics, stained glass, and other priceless works of art. It's a leading tourist attraction. Despite the massive fire that swept the cathedral, no one was killed and only one firefighter was injured among the 400 who battled the flames. French President Emmanuel Macron pledged to rebuild the cathedral.
Alors je vous le dis très solennellement ce soir.
I am solemnly telling you tonight, this cathedral will be rebuilt by all of us together, and it's probably part of France's destiny, and it will be our project for the years to come. I am committed to this.
Almost immediately, a monumental effort to restore the cathedral's grandeur was launched. The cathedral restoration is a story of dedication and recovery, even despite delays during the COVID-19 pandemic. The structure was finally secured in September 2021 after carpenters, scaffolding experts, climbers, and others helped to build temporary structures and a special enormous umbrella to protect the towers, vaults, and walls of the roofless building. During the spring of 2022, workshops of master glassmakers and locksmiths from across France began the painstaking process of cleaning and restoring the cathedral's famous stained glass windows. The scaffolding was removed in February 2024 to show off the cathedral's new spire. It's adorned with a golden rooster and cross. It offers a glimpse into the future as Notre Dame nears its grand reopening.
Truly an icon.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember the shock when that happened. Such a national treasure. But it seems like everything is on track and happening timely so that it can reopen finally again this year.
And they had to use records and digital means to reproduce the ceiling, and so they can reconstruct it. And they call that part of the roof a forest, because they use that centuries-old wood to actually build it. There's so many of them.
Exactly. And I was thinking that actually they use a very specific stone that they ship from a certain part of France that only a certain company could cut, and then all these centuries-old woods. That's actually pretty impressive to do in 5 years.
It's awesome.
Because of the technology. All right, we're heading to a quick break, but we'll be right back.
NTD News, the fastest growing independent news source in America, bringing you breaking news from around the world. Expert analysis, investigative reporting, and original award-winning documentaries. We're known for our uncensored China coverage you won't find anywhere else. We cover the stories that affect you and shape our world without the political noise. We report from the heart with you in mind. Watch us right here on NTD News.
Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. The U.S. Senate has dismissed articles to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas. Lawmakers react to the decision.
House Speaker Mike Johnson says he will put a series of foreign aid bills on the floor. How the Speaker is handling conservative objections and an attempt to oust him.
Israel's military says it killed and arrested several terrorists during a raid in northern Gaza this week, and Israel strikes Hezbollah targets in response to an exploding drone attack.
Another Ivy League school under scrutiny for reports of campus anti-Semitism. Lawmakers grill Columbia University officials over what's being done in response. We have takeaways from the hearing.
Dual congressional hearings revealing shocking allegations of lapses of safety controls at Boeing. We get analysis on whistleblower testimony.
New team uniforms for the 2024 Paris Olympics are out. Team uniforms range from sporty to elegant and everything in between. Get a sneak preview of U.S. and other team uniforms.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Today is Thursday, April 18th. Today's top news. European Union leaders decided yesterday to step up sanctions against Iran. This after Tehran's missile and drone attack on Israel left world powers scrambling to prevent a wider conflict in the Middle East. EU Council President Charles Michel reacts.
And we feel it's very important to do everything to isolate Iran, to engage with the countries in the region so that we can try to support a peace process, to support peace talks.
The summit in Brussels is the first meeting of the EU's 27 national leaders since the attack on Saturday. Israel has signaled it will retaliate, but has not said how. In the U.S., House lawmakers also recently passed several bills aimed at countering Iran. One measure is the Standing Against Houthi Aggression Act, which labels Houthis as terrorists. Another is the Iran Sanctions Relief Review Act, which requires congressional review of Iran sanction waivers. And Israel's military says it killed and arrested several terrorists during an operation in northern Gaza this week.
The IDF says it raided a building complex that included 2 schools in a civilian area in the northeastern strip.
The army says it had intelligence that terrorists from Hamas and Islamic Jihad were using the building and civilians inside as human shields. Israel says it told civilians to leave before the operation.
The IDF says fighter jets hit Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon yesterday. That's after the terrorist group fired anti-tank missiles and an exploding drone into Israel, wounding 18 people earlier in the day.
Meanwhile, Israel says the first aid shipment to Gaza through Ashdod port has now been delivered. Israel recently approved use of the port to help transfer more aid.
The IDF said 8 World Food Program trucks carrying flour entered through the Kerem Shalom crossing after inspections.
And back here in the States, the Senate voted yesterday to dismiss articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
The Democrat-controlled chamber dismissed the 2 charges against Mayorkas, voting quickly and along party lines. And here for an update on what's happening in Congress is Richard Lyons, a political commentator and the author of The DNA of Democracy and Shadows of the Acropolis. Thank you so much for joining us, Richard. Republican Senator Ted Cruz said Democrats set a dangerous precedent by not holding an impeachment trial. He said Senate Leader Schumer is asking his colleagues to vote on political expediency to avoid listening to arguments. Is that what's happening here?
Well, what's occurring is that you have one party of our government that's acting unconstitutionally by not enforcing immigration laws. And this goes back to the beginning of the Biden administration. The only remedy to Secretary Mayorkas not acting constitutionally is to impeach him and to have a trial. So they have voted in the House and he was voted impeached. The secondary step to that is to hold a trial in the Senate so that there can be a discovery process of exactly how he has acted unconstitutionally and to judge him. What Chuck Schumer has done, which all the Democrats are doing, is acting unconstitutionally by ignoring the law and actually breaking it. It is without precedent that the House has voted for impeachment and the Senate has ignored it.
Understood, Richard. And there was a little bit of somewhat what some are calling comic relief when Senator Cory Booker came over to Senator Lindsey Graham when the vote was going on, and Lindsey Graham said aye, voting along with Democrats, not realizing that he was supposed to say no, and then he said no after he corrected that. So what impact will Senate Democrats' decision to vote down both articles of impeachment against Mayorkas immediately have on the border and American prosperity?
Well, here again, you have a party of government that's in the majority. They own the presidency and they hold the Senate. And we have a very slim House minority. Now, I understand that Speaker Johnson, we have a very slim House majority under Speaker Johnson. And what he's doing, he's tying to the aid bill. A portion of that deals with the border and executing the laws under H.R. 2 that were upheld during the Trump administration. So you're in a very narrow place where the Republicans can only do so much. So what this says, what the Democrats are saying by not taking up the impeachment trial in the Senate is, we agree with the unconstitutional acts of our president and his Secretary of Homeland Security. They are acting in a lawless, unconstitutional manner, both on the ground at the border, through the executive, through the agency, and now in the Senate.
So, Richard, let's talk about proposed aid for Ukraine. By presenting measures for more accountability, better strategy, and a loan structure, is Speaker Johnson trying to make it easier for deeply conservative members of his conference to go along with this so he can pass it through?
Yes, and he'll need that based on the one vote majority that he holds. He's going to need his entire conference to vote for this package. It has not only converted the aid into a loan, it has also given Congress oversight as to how the money is used within Ukraine. And it does demand that within 45 days, Ukraine come up with a strategy and profess that strategy to the House of Representatives here in the United States. Also, they're going after the assets of Russian oligarchs to have that pay for the part of the aid package. Also, in addition to this, there is another $8 billion in aid to Israel without a concurrent package of aid to Hamas, which the Democrats wanted. So I feel very good about this bill.
Okay, yeah, and President Biden said that he strongly supports this package, and it was his first endorsement of Speaker Johnson here. Is this loan structure for Ukraine a novel idea?
It is. Well, it is. We have pretty much treated foreign aid like a carte blanche system. We give the aid and we don't ask where it's going. Take the Biden administration, for example. They freed up $10 billion for Iran. And then in the aftermath of freeing that money up, said, well, we do expect you to use this for humanitarian aid. And of course, the Ayatollah said, we'll do whatever we want with it. So structuring it in the structure of a loan, which needs repayment. And also, I think there's part of the loan agreement is with the rare earth minerals that Ukraine enjoys as resources. And then going after the Russian oligarchs, this is brand new. And I think it's a great way to go with Ukraine, which is known to have some corruption.
All right, well, Richard Lyons, political commentator and author, thank you for the analysis.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
And despite pressure from conservatives, Speaker Mike Johnson announced yesterday he's sticking to his guns and plans to put a series of foreign aid bills on the floor. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the aid package and an attempt to oust Johnson from his speaker post.
I am not resigning.
The three-part supplemental package looks strikingly similar to the Senate's bill in several key ways. It includes a little over $9 billion in humanitarian aid for Gaza and other conflict zones around the world, a red line for Democrats. It adds up to about $95 billion in aid, the same amount the Senate bill included, with a change that $10 billion in Ukraine economic assistance is in the form of a repayable loan. Overall, the bill will send around $60 billion to Ukraine, $26 billion to Israel, and $8 billion to the Indo-Pacific. Speaker Johnson says there's no way to move forward without the help of Democrats.
This is very simple. I'm operating with the smallest margin in U.S. history. I have a one-vote margin.
Conservative GOP members are attempting to oust Johnson over the aid package. They are angered by Ukraine aid and the lack of action on southern border security. Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky said he would co-sponsor Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's motion to vacate, but the speaker appears unfazed by threats to oust him.
I don't walk around thinking about the motion to vacate. It's a procedural matter here that I think has been abused in recent times. Maybe at some point we change that.
Representative Mark Molinaro says Americans are tired of the theater. The congressman says those who want to move forward with the motion to vacate ought to put it to rest.
For too many of my colleagues, they feel as if democracy is too much work. If it is, they should find a different job.
Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi said he would not support ousting Johnson.
I think he's a good person, and he wants to do the right thing. Now he's got to stand up and show us that that's the case.
President Biden on Wednesday endorsed the plan offered up by Speaker Johnson. The president called the support to Israel and Ukraine critical and praised the humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Another Ivy League school faced scrutiny from lawmakers yesterday over a rise in campus anti-Semitism.
Columbia University President Minouche Shafik was absent from last year's grilling, which led to the presidents of both UPenn and Harvard resigning.
School officials came prepared for yesterday's 4-hour hearing, but still had a hard time giving clear answers around hiring, consequences, and disciplinary action. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has takeaways from the grilling.
Another Ivy League school president met lawmakers Wednesday over a surge in campus anti-Semitism since Hamas's terrorist attack on Israel last year. Lawmakers asked if calling for genocide against Jews violated Columbia University's code of conduct. All 4 officials answered yes, it does. Columbia University President Minouche Shafik says the central challenge on campus is trying to reconcile free speech, including the right to protest, with the students' right to be in an environment free of harassment or discrimination.
Regrettably, the events of October 7th brought to the fore an undercurrent of anti-Semitism that is a major challenge, and like many other universities, Columbia has seen a rise in anti-Semitic incidents.
A big focus of Wednesday's hearing was disciplinary action. Shafik said tenured professor Joseph Massad, who called the October 7th attacks awesome in an online article the next day, had been spoken to by his department. Massad told CNN no one said anything to him along those lines and had not been reprimanded in any way. He says he was shown solidarity by his chair and deans over death threats he says he received. Massad says his chairmanship was simply coming to the end of a 1-year appointment and was unaware of any probe.
And it's not just that case. Let me bring your attention to Mohammed Abdu, who was hired after the October 7th terrorist attack.
Abdu on social media said he was with Hamas, Hezbollah, and Islamic Jihad. Shafik said Abdu is grading his students' papers, but will never teach at Columbia again, and that it will be on his permanent record. She stated Columbia officials will not tolerate anti-Semitic threats, images, and other violations, and that much more work is needed, including an improved vetting process for hiring. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Dual congressional hearings yesterday revealed shocking allegations of lapses of safety controls at Boeing. For some analysis on the challenges Boeing is facing, I spoke to Mike Leon. He's one of our contributors and the Director of Policy and Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation.
As one of my friends told me who flies regularly, if it's a Boeing, I'm not going. And that's kind of the refrain that I heard from a lot of people that fly on this airline. Let's get to what happened on Capitol Hill. And for people that don't understand what's going on with Boeing, remember that in January there was Alaska Airlines that you saw there in the package that on the left side of the wing, a door blew out where nobody happened to be sitting. This is what led to all of this. John Bennett used to work for Boeing, who was, an engineer as well, like the Capitol Hill folks that were testifying. And he recently died on March 11th, weirdly, when he was testifying against Boeing to a law firm. So a lot of questions have started to come up about Boeing safety, specifically around the 777 line, like you mentioned, 787 line, and the 737 line. And there's been so many different reports about different flights from United Airlines across all of these commercial airlines recently, Southwest, that have had recent issues, and they all happen to be Boeing planes. There's 10,000 commercial Boeing airlines that are out there across different airline industries, and there was 2 plane crashes back in 2018 and 2019. Some of the families of those victims were at the hearings yesterday. This has been a huge mess for Boeing, but at the center of it, like you heard in the package there, safety concerns, and they're not addressing the safety concerns. And it looks like, and my biggest takeaway from the hearing yesterday was that they're telling the NTSB, the FAA, the DOT, what it should be doing, what it should be the reverse. The regulatory agencies that govern these airline companies should be telling them what they should be doing in terms of safety and manufacturing.
Our contributor Mike Leon, Director of Policy and Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation, and the host of the Can We Please Talk News Commentary podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Coming up, a senior editor at NPR has resigned from the outlet. This comes after he published an essay criticizing the network for liberal bias. That's as NPR's new CEO is facing backlash over her comments on the First Amendment and former President Trump.
New team uniforms for the Paris Olympics 2024 are out. They range from sporty to elegant and everything in between. Get a sneak preview of U.S. and other team uniforms coming up.
Funny expression. There's a little scar right below his neck. The artist, on a trip to somewhere in South America, he met this kid who told him a story about himself. The technique is really good. As you'll see, like in the foreground, there's water on his face. The texture is so realistic, but then sort of in the back, you have these washed out colors, almost a sort of fantasy feel. The whole of the picture is very balanced, and you still get that sense of harmony and warm light from it. The artist, he was really moved by the child's spirit. The child's from the slums, and so he looks around and he sees people who either get into drugs or they get into gangs, and he doesn't want that for himself. So he was telling this artist about how he's going to make a better life for himself. The immense spirit and determination that the kid had really stuck with the guy, so that's why he painted such a large portrait of the child.
Many of us have been child fighters, but this little kid learned to defend himself in his own way. It's a great sacrifice that way. And so this is another form of strength, another form of endurance. We are capable of much more than we think. These children amaze us.
The 2024 NTD 9th International Chinese Vocal Competition is scheduled to take place at Merkin Hall, Kaufman Music Center in New York from September 18th to 21st. The competition specially invites vocalists from the world-famous Shen Yun Performing Arts to serve as judges. The prestigious Gold Award is $10,000. Chinese vocal artists aged 18 to 50 are welcome to register.
You need some help?
Your tow chains are a little loose. Could spark a wildfire. I could show you how to secure them properly if you'd like.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Anytime. You should check out SmokeyBear.com. They've got a bunch of tips on wildfire prevention.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Good to have you back. A senior business editor at NPR has announced his resignation.
This comes just a day after the outlet suspended him for an essay criticizing what he called the company's liberal bias.
In a statement on X,
Yeah, that was Yuri Berliner. He took jabs at the company's CEO. He said he can't work in a newsroom where he's, quote, disparaged by his boss. Just days prior, he published an article in the Free Press titled, "I've been at NPR for 25 years. Here's how we lost America's trust." In it, he said NPR's culture changed from having an open-minded spirit to a much narrower worldview.
Berliner cited a number of examples in NPR's coverage, from Hunter Biden's business dealings to the Israel-Hamas war, specifically, quote, highlighting the suffering of Palestinians at almost every turn while downplaying the atrocities of October 7th.
And that was NPR CEO Catherine Maher has defended the outlet, saying NPR staff are, quote, excellent, accomplished professionals with an intense commitment to their work.
She's been criticized, though, for an alleged progressive bias and for disparaging social media posts about former President Trump. This was prior to her position at NPR. And switching gears, law enforcement agencies in at least 4 states reported 911 service interruptions last night.
Officials in South Dakota, Nevada, and Nebraska say services have been restored. They did not identify the cause of the failure.
Scary. Authorities in Texas announced outages in multiple cities, but didn't give details about the cause.
Texas police said the issue was with carriers and not city systems.
The Department of Homeland Security has warned of an increased risk of cyber attacks on 911 services after it switched to digital systems.
Several cyber attacks targeting 911 systems have taken down services in recent years. A cyber attack in 2017 paralyzed 911 centers in more than a dozen states. That is really one thing that you don't want jeopardized, the 911 line.
And it seems like it's gotten very vulnerable with the technology. And also, you know, a quick Google shows me that, well, let's say in New York, for example, there is 4,200 medical calls a day. If we go by that number, that's like 175 calls an hour. People that were frantically calling probably, and didn't reach anybody. That's scary.
Life-threatening issues there. And we've seen cyber attacks like in Columbia Pipeline and things like that. That's just some area that the U.S. has to take very seriously, the cybersecurity.
Absolutely. All right, and we're heading to some less concerning news.
The 2024 Olympics is near.
Yes, and the U.S. and Ralph Lauren are teaming up for fresh new uniforms for the Paris 2024 Olympics.
How will the United States and teams from other nations appear on the global stage? Let's take a look.
For the 9th time, Ralph Lauren is providing the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic teams with uniforms. The team got the chance to see them yesterday. This year, the Olympics are adding breakdancing as an official sport. U.S. breakdancer Jeffrey Lewis is excited to use the clothes to create a unique look.
I'm looking forward to just presenting my style, because in hip-hop and breaking, there are styles. Everybody has their own style, and I like to just showcase it and see how it compares to somebody else's. And then the audience and everything, I just think it's going to be a party to have breaking at the Olympics.
Ralph Lauren will be providing U.S. Olympians with opening and closing ceremonies apparel, as well as a collection of village wear apparel and accessories. The collection features sporty and stylish designs in the patriotic colors of red, white, and blue. The clothes are made with consideration of material and manufacturing choices, including the use of recycled polyester and cotton. A portion of sales from the Ralph Lauren Team USA collection will support the teams which are not funded federally. Other nations have new uniforms too. France is bringing sports closer to arts and culture by creating elegance with tuxedo-like outfits. Here's Australia's sporty selections featuring iconic Australian animals embroidered on the pocket of each green blazer. Japan's offerings showcase the eco-friendly production and light carbon footprint of their Olympic apparel, labeled inside each clothing item. Canadian clothing designer Lululemon say their uniforms emphasized adaptability, thermal comfort, fit, and national pride. Olympic uniforms are a mix of symbolism, patriotism, form, function, and fashion trends. The 2024 Paris Olympics promise many colorful offerings, sure to delight fashion-conscious fans worldwide.
Well, you know what they say, look good, feel good.
Yeah, truest sense of the word, like France really went all out. But I have to say, it's very interesting to see the different identities of different nations, the way they chose to represent themselves.
Yeah, it almost looked like they had some marsupials on the Australian jackets there.
Right.
But you know, the functionality is really important too, because I remember I was a wrestler and, you know, we had our warm-ups on. It really depends like on how it keeps you warm and everything, how you're going to perform.
Bringing performance and fashion into one.
Yeah.
Also, we are wrapping up our show right here, but before we do so, we want to introduce to you our NTD special report that's coming up next Friday from NTD's Kelly Wright.
Has the world forgotten October 7th, Israel's 9/11? Kelly Wright traveled to Israel to speak to survivors and hostage family members.
They vow to never forget as they combat anti-Semitism and fight for freedom. Watch Hope for Israel, an NTD News primetime special, April 26th, Friday at 10 p.m. on NTD TV.
Don't want to miss it.
Absolutely. All right, on that note, we're wrapping up our show right here. Be sure to stay tuned for NTD's News Today broadcast at 10 a.m. Eastern Time coming up.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
All right, thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Do you ever wake up and realize your life has no purpose?
Do I have a death wish? Morgan asked. Maybe I did. I thought this would be our final run ever. We had made millions and millions of dollars, but God had other plans.
The one-time drug dealer turned pastor, along with 2 others, will be executed at 12 midnight local time.
The next day, something strange happened. Someone came up to me and gave me this flyer about Jesus.
You can be in heaven, or you can be in hell. The choice